is actually not a metaphor. No, sometimes the storm itself is actually a storm, like tornadoes and hail and wind and rain, or blizzards or hurricanes or tsunamis. And sometimes the storm will throw you off base. Sometimes the storm will throw you out of your position. It'll throw you out of opportunity. It'll take things away from you. And as a leader, you've got to be ready for that. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I want you to know right here on this set, which is actually outside on my patio in our new lake house. I love this little setting. I love the birds and the roosters in the background. Not so happy about the old trucks that cruise by, but hey, people got to work. And I'm glad they are, because otherwise we'd be feeding with our tax money. So I'm glad they're working. I'm glad they're working. Glad that I have a chance to work. But right here on this set, right here by the lake, we actually had 50 and 60 mile an hour wind gusts. And so everything you see in this camera angle behind me, except for me, was blown over, tossed around. Now, these walls, these wooden walls, these are reclaimed barnwood. And they weigh close to 150 pounds a piece, but they were tossed around like matchsticks by the gusts of wind that came through here. The other lamp that I had, broken, shattered, it's dust, it's toast. There's nothing I could do to fix it. My beautiful little fake palm tree behind me, it was all over the yard, but we were able to pick most of it up. I'm going to have to replace the vase it's in, but the rest of it seemed to make it okay. And here's what I realize. There are a whole lot of people who have storms that blow through their life that would come home like I did and find this set scattered all over the yard and think, well, I guess I'm just done. That's a good reason to quit. And it's an excuse to do nothing from here. And I can tell you there are a lot of people, whether you're talking about struggling with addiction or you're talking about a loss of a job, heaven forbid the loss of a loved one, a change in a political season or a political climate, an environmental catastrophe, all of those things can be storms that destroy the hope that you have. And the three things that you need to counter those storms that are inevitable in life are preparedness, awareness, and resiliency. Preparedness, awareness, and resiliency. By preparedness, I mean, you know that something is coming. You may not know what it is. You don't know if it's going to be a hurricane or a tornado, if it's going to be a snowstorm. In Texas, we've had ice storms and wind storms all in a 30-day window. Welcome to Texas, especially North Texas. But we know that all over the world there are climate events that no one can predict. No one thought Haiti would be hit by a tsunami or that Japan would be hit by a tsunami and an earthquake. But those things require preparedness, which means you look ahead at any potential possible disaster that could happen and you ask yourself, in the event that the worst thing did happen, what would I do? What do I need? What do I need to have? What tools do I need to have at my fingertips, or at least close by references and response tools? Maybe that's, I don't know, a place to get away to. Maybe it's food and water rations for the next few days as you struggle with how you're going to get past this moment of time. Maybe it's, who do I need to connect with? Who do I need to rely on as resources? Who will I depend on? Do I have an operating manual, a standard operating procedure, not only for myself, but for the people who might be coming behind me if I don't make it through this storm? And it's the failure of the leader to not have some kind of preparedness document for in the event of, I don't make it through this, do those who are left behind taking up my mantle realize what it's going to take to do this? Do they have everything necessary to pull that off? Not just instructions, which would be very nice, as standard operating procedures have a purpose, but also to have the tools and equipment, the connections, the relationships necessary to carry this on. Has somebody been walking alongside me in my shoes long enough to say, if I don't show up, it's going to come off, this event, this process, this next book, this next season is going to come off the same way, with or without me? If you haven't prepared the next group of people, the next generation, to manage the spot that you're going to be vacant from, then you have failed as a leader to do your job, because that legacy contingency is your job. I'll say that word in English in a minute. Contingency. That's your job as a leader, to be prepared for those things. Next, you've got to have awareness. You've got to be aware of the status of your entire team. Where are they? Are they in trouble? Do you need to stop what you're doing to help them? Can you get everybody on your team through this storm? Again, it doesn't matter if you're talking about a financial storm or a climate incident, you're talking about a wildfire that breaks out. It doesn't matter what the storm is. Maybe it's just a political storm. Maybe it's just a bad PR storm. Yes, leaders have those too. They make stupid mistakes. It gets in the news, and now there's a storm of public relations that you've got to deal with. That can cost you jobs. That can cost you customers. That can cost you income. That can cost you relationships. And you're going to have to deal with those things in the same way. Be prepared. Be aware. How's it impacting me? How's it impacting my clients? How's it impacting my team? What can I do to help them? Have I given them every tool necessary to get through this? Am I aware of their need when I'm not standing here? Can it still come off without me? That's a big question every leader should be asking. And many are so ego-driven, they don't bother to ask. And finally, you've got to have resiliency. It was disheartening to find my studio set blown all over the yard. It was disheartening to find pieces broken and shattered and unreusable. It was disheartening to have to go invest money to buy more stuff to put this back together again. But resiliency said, I realize this is not ideal, but I'm going to be fiercely flexible, and I'm going to charge into this challenge, this problem, this situation as we see it. And I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let this little hiccup, this little road bump. And honestly, I know in the scheme of things, the grand scheme of things, that this is nothing. I mean, this is nothing. Disappointing? Yes. Frustrating? Yes. Irritating that I don't even have a studio to do this stuff in? Yes. But is it enough to stop me? No, or not even close. Not even close. And I'd like to think that even if you 10x the scale of the problem, if you 10x the size of the storm, my preparedness, my awareness, and my resiliency would be such that I would look at it and say, okay, not ideal, but not the end of the world. I'm still kicking and breathing. I still have a chance to go do this again. I still believe in what I'm doing. I still believe in the people that I serve, and I'm not staying down. I'm going to get up and go do this again. And I don't care about the size of the organization that you lead. One person, 100,000 people, 1 million people, whether it's a small team or a country. If you don't have the preparedness, if you haven't thought through what will happen if, and taken the time to prepare yourself and your team with the assets, the tools, and the operating procedures necessary, then when that disaster comes, it doesn't matter how big or small it is. If you're not prepared, you're not prepared. It will take you by surprise and take your knees out from under you. If you're not aware of how every little hiccup, every decision you make, every challenge you face, every storm that comes your way will impact the people on your team and those you serve, if you're not aware of that, then you're probably not going to be aware when the crisis comes, how badly they need you to make decisions, provide resources, provide connections, and give direction. That's what you're here for as the leader. And if you're not resilient enough to face down the biggest, baddest storm, I mean, there are countries on earth that have been wiped out by natural disasters that we've never seen again. Countries, nations destroyed by war that never rose up again. The name of the nation doesn't exist anymore. And then there are those like Japan after World War II who came back better. There are those like Japan after the tsunami and earthquake who came back better. There are those nations and countries and states who faced some of the worst. Florida in the most recent hurricane season, I believe it was 21 days from the hurricane strike until the bridges were open again. That's impressive. Even if it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, that's impressive. There are places along the Gulf Coast that were hit by Hurricane Katrina that still have not been rebuilt. Partly for funding, partly because they don't need them anymore. But if you don't have the resiliency to face a storm of that magnitude and say, I'm still doing this, I'm coming back, I'll fight through it, I'll do it again, I'll start over if I have to. If you don't have that kind of resiliency in yourself, then your organization's not going to have it either. And if your organization doesn't have it, survival is in question. Look, if you're a leader and you're leading an organization of any sort, if you're an influencer and you're influencing people to make decisions, you've got to come at any potential storm with preparedness, awareness, and resiliency. You better look ahead to what could happen, what could go wrong, and what tools do you have on hand to face that storm when it comes? Are you aware of how people are going to need you when that happens? And are you resilient enough to face the storm and charge forward afterward? If you've got those three tools, you've got a great advantage. And if you don't have those three tools, chances are the next minor storm or major storm is going to entirely wipe you out. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.